Okay, well, welcome everyone to one of our first practitioner webinars for the NPF 14 L&D ARCO project. And we have our team from Auckland University, the Education Department, who are going to be presenting what they've been up to and their community practice, facilitated by Adrian Moyle. So I'll just hand over to them. They're going to give us a bit of a presentation and then they'll open it up for some questions and interaction. So over to Adrian.
Thank you, Tom. So I have here with me Rena Heap, Paul Nevilleson and Kelly Bigwood, who are part of our community of practice here at Auckland University Faculty of Education. And we're looking at the question, will learners' mobile devices deliver innovation, inclusion and transformation? And I think what we were thinking was, when we looked at this question, the devices in themselves don't actually deliver the innovation. And we've been looking at a whole lot of different frameworks as we've been exploring mobile learning in our community of practice. And we are thinking that pedagogical practice is key to delivering innovation, inclusion and transformation. So the next thing we come to is, how do we do that? And luckily we've got some experts here on that subject. And the first person that I'm going to hand over to is Kelly Bigwood.
Thanks, Adrian. I'm not sure about that, but we'll talk about what we've been doing anyway. So kia ora koutou. I taught the small class of 9 secondary pre-service teachers last year, and we used Google Apps and mobile devices to create community and collaboration, to share resources and support each other, particularly over the long periods of practicum where we were away from each other. As well as using Google Docs for the collaborative work with peers, students were required to use them to record their weekly reflections about their learning, and they shared those with me. Using the Google Docs allowed me to access them anytime, and I would respond with challenge, question, correct, encourage, all just written in another colour, and they could respond to that in another colour again. So it became an ongoing conversation while we weren't actually in close proximity to each other. And I found this to be incredibly powerful for building relationship, ensuring that every person received feedback from me, and the learning was deepened. So it was inclusive, but it was also transformational. Initial teacher education students have all experienced thousands of hours of school education. They all bring that with them, and this provides a real challenge for us because prior knowledge provides the framework that students hang their new knowledge on with all new learning. However, their own experiences of education don't necessarily align with the reformed-minded teaching that the research tells us enhances learning. So the process of using the Google Docs for reflections, it allowed a vessel for me to challenge some of that thinking, to correct the misconceptions and help the students deconstruct some of their thinking in order to change and improve their practice. And I saw that their learning was visibly deepened through this. So there were only 9 students, but they've gone on to teach over 900 teenagers this year. So it was a hugely powerful tool, and I acknowledge that it was also very time consuming for only 9 students. So my next question is, how can this be upscaled?
Great, thanks Kelly. And the next person is Rena.
Hi, I'm Rena. So I'll be sharing with you a case study of a summer school block course which was called Digital Enhancements. That gives you an idea of what we were trying to do in the course. In particular, I want to share that with you this morning to look at how the students' mobile devices were used to foster innovation. All of the students in this course were practicing second-year teachers, and they all teach in one-to-one device schools. The key innovation in hindsight of this course was its intensely collaborative focus. And everything from note-taking, they just took one set of notes collectively each day, to the sharing of ideas and the building of a collective knowledge through that community of practice. So from a pedagogical perspective, in order to facilitate this to happen, we created a Moodle site that we use synchronously through the block course during the day. So bit of lecturing, bit of presentation, reading, whatever, and then using the Moodle site to go into collaborative Google Docs or slides or forms. It was a seamless transition each time. They just clicked and there they were. So all of these activities that they clicked through into were structured using Gilly Salmon's model for e-learning activities. So they were stepped through stages of access, socialization, information sharing, onto knowledge construction and idea development. What I found particularly striking was the evidence of the knowledge construction that was seen in their assignments. So I had anticipated their assignments would look quite similar because they all drew on the same collective docs for their assignments, but they were chalk and cheese. There were no two that were alike at all. So I found that a really interesting indicator of the transformation of their own learning that had occurred during this course. There we go.
Thank you, Rena. And now we'll have Paul.
Kia ora koutou, my name's Paul Nevilleton. I work with a teacher education program for undergraduates. It's a core part of their course. And one of the things we were ideally looking at in our first iteration was to blend this notion of face-to-face with a Moodle portal that our students could engage with. The first time through, our students were initially only introduced to that. There was limited sense of socialisation online prior to trying to get them engaging with an online discussion forum to get that information exchange happening. That was the first iteration. Moving into the second one, we're rolling this model out on 3 campuses with 200 students and 5 different lectures. We've followed Gilly Salmon's structured model, if you like, where we've collectively ensured that all students had an opportunity to access the Moodle portal at the same time. There was a series of activities built in so that the online socialisation occurred alongside the individual workshop lecturers, and that led into an initial information exchange based on something that they'd had already face-to-face, but in quite a low-key manner. What we're identifying at this stage, and we're 3 weeks into the course, there's quite a difference in terms of connectivity across all 3 campuses. So connectivity being different to student learning, we can see that the students are connected, but the online participation and ongoing information exchange is really led by one particular class, which sort of leads us into that next notion of transformation, and that's around transformation of lecturer practice. So whilst the initial lecturer, so myself, had an opportunity to engage in that change, we can't clarify whether all lecturers have continued to model a difference in practice. They've had an opportunity to observe and participate with the key lecturer, but we can't ensure that that collective change has been built. And our next iteration, which will be in the second semester, will be looking to build the online Moodle portal collectively and collaboratively as a team to see if there is a marked difference in terms of lecturer participation and, as a result, student learning as well.
Great, thank you very much, everyone. So now I'm just going to stop sharing the screen and then we can have our discussion. Is everyone still there?
Yeah, we had a couple of connection issues, but I think we managed to keep it all going. So, thank you very much. That was awesome presentation, guys. Very well done. Very professional. So let's throw it open for questions.
Can you see us now?
Yes, yes we can.
Okay.
Well, I've got a question. Paul, from your last point about, I think that's a really important one, about how you try and work out whether the lecturers are coming along in the journey as well effectively and whether they're changing their practice. Are there any thoughts on looking at student responses going forward to in effect see whether the lecturers have changed their approach? Or
In terms of collecting some data through student discussion?
Yeah.
One of the things that we've set up as a cohort is we've taken some initial data, and those students who have agreed to participate in a series of interviews afterwards, we can feed that in as an interview question. What I would hate to see is that it then becomes this lecturer did one thing and another lecturer didn't. It's not a. I think it's partially in response to the way I've led the setup of the whole Moodle process and way of engaging with the course. That's potentially led to a different, what I'll call a difference in engagement. So we have got an opportunity to collect some student information from that through the targeted interviews, and obviously through working with the lecturing team as well. It's an open and transparent thing. What I'd hope is that people just took for granted that this was a way of working. Currently we see a lecture or a course may be run as a workshop and a face-to-face. I'd like to see it as workshop face-to-face, and we have our Moodle delivery as well. And I'd like to see it as just being part and parcel of what we take for granted in terms of how a course runs. It's not at that stage yet, and that's why it's that notion of how do we get that collaborative practice occurring, and one of the ways is making sure everyone's on board beforehand. The challenge is the 3 campuses, and to get the 3 campuses at the same time, MIT, Taitokerau and Epsom.
Yeah, I mean, we've personally not looked for that kind of information ourselves, but we found that it has actually come to the surface from the students. The student feedback on, what's happening here is really great, and I wish that would happen here. Those kinds of responses.
Yeah, I suppose what happens with the course, to give you a little bit of further information, they have it's a 1 hour lecture, which I deliver, and then it's spread across 3 lecturers here on this campus do a workshop situation, and then at MIT and Taitokerau, a lecturer delivers the whole course out there. The material that's delivered on all 3 campuses is exactly the same, so all students get the same PowerPoint structure. The words that come out of the lecturer's mouth might be a little bit different, but they can interact in the discussion forums online, and anyone can contribute to those. And when we look at it, we can track and I talked about connectivity. We can track those students who are going, and they are looking. We've got a lot of lurkers. The contributors are those who have come through my class. So that even though my modelling has been quite explicit for the on-campus ones here, it doesn't. Those who are contributing from other classes on this particular campus, that they're just lurking. They're loitering at this stage. So I don't know what's happening in those people's physical spaces.
Interesting.
Does anyone else have a question?
Hi, Adrian. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Very well presented. Yeah, good job. I just had one question. Well, actually, question for the whole group. Have you, maybe personally or as a group, identified strategies that work with the students in terms of getting them engaged with the process and the platform?
Yeah, I think that's definitely where we've used Julie Salmon's 5-stage model, and that's easily accessible online, and we have certainly found that to be invaluable. She is very clear in her writing and in her experience over a decade that if the students don't spend sufficient time at an access and motivation stage, and then at a socialization stage where you're just doing all those introductory kind of activities using whatever platform you are using, if they don't spend enough time there, then they will not be comfortable exchanging information or developing knowledge, constructing knowledge together. So we've all gone through that and worked at each of those stages just as a framework to work within, and it has been really effective.
Do you want to talk about your sign-in song?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do, actually. Of course, my circumstance, my context was quite different with such a small class, but one of the approaches that I took was to use, to record the first couple of weeks learning using the Video Star app, and we had a call-in song, which was Top of the World, Imagine Dragons, which became our anthem, and it was always played at the beginning of class, and by the time the song finished, we were all ready to get into work. So it was just modelling something that you can use in your classroom in a secondary school. And so we used that song, and we used it to record the learning, which went onto the Google site, and it just really helped create a classroom environment that was relaxed and entertaining, and they were able to show people the video, and this is my class, and as well as being a record of learning of one way to record what we were doing in class. And it very quickly, or it seemed to very quickly establish a community, a trusted community of practice that we used. So I found that face-to-face, that first 2 weeks of establishing the climate, of us working together, immediately working together on the devices in the classroom with everything that we did, using Google, the Google apps, created trust and connection. And I mean, one of the group, they're out in schools now, but posted the Imagine Dragons song again this week. Remember our song, this is our anthem. They've got together for lunch yesterday and last week, so it's very much created that community of practice.
Which has moved from a setting here on campus through to now out in their practice. Whereas with the first years this year, because we didn't want to rely on their ability to have a device, so we set up a situation where they all came to the computer labs. So for our access and motivation, it was about, hey, introduce yourself to a person across the room, post a picture, we had one cohort, and I was modelling that for the other lecturing team. One of the classes took it 3 or 4 steps further, and we've got Team Julius that sits within another cohort. And I can talk about Team Julius in the full lecture theatre, and everyone knows who they are, but they're not interacting. They're not at that stage, and we're 3 weeks, so they're not at that stage doing that information exchange. They're still in their online socialisation, even though it's connected to core content. For example, go and find a YouTube clip that is similar to, name your best invention and find some information about. So it's similar to some of the stuff that we're covering in class, but they're still at their socialisation stage, and maybe that's a time frame. Maybe it's because we don't see them as much as Kelly was, maybe in the larger cohort we need a longer time before we can expect some of that information exchange to be more relevant and pertinent. Anecdotally, the response to questions in the lecture theatre is hugely different than what I've had in the past. They're more informed, they're more aware of the readings, they've already had some guided questions related to those readings, and they can interact much more effectively and choose to do that in the face-to-face situation, which I found really interesting. So they're not sitting there like stunned mullets, they're actually talking a lot more.
So I guess my question for you as a team, as a community practice, would be, how has your experience of being part of a community practice, changed your approach to your pedagogical practice, and perhaps been a model that you've started to implement?
I sometimes complain that there's no going back. Done this thing, and it's completely shifted my approach to teaching and learning, and I can't go back. Yeah, so it's been huge. To give us what we struggled with this morning was putting our work into 2 minutes. How can we do this? There has been so much learning. The shift for my students has been visibly huge. And it's completely shifted the way that I do things, which has been part of this, being this community.
And I think that there's something unique about working together as a community, because for a long time I've tried to incorporate technology into my practice, and I've done it diligently, but there is something within a community, within working on something collaboratively with the same goal in mind, that has been totally transformational.
I completely agree with what Rena said there. I was in the same boat, working individually. This is it.
So we would be really reluctant to give up the meetings that we have, because from a selfish perspective, they are invaluable. Yeah.
Our challenge now is taking that experience and actually not only sharing it, similar to this through a webinar type thing, but sharing it with our colleagues, and whether that's within the immediacy of discipline teams, similar to myself, or whether it's in Kelly's situation, maybe picking the commerce papers and they would all engage with Google Hangouts, or moving from the Malaya Kalani. So our challenge is to sort of look at how we disseminate our practice in a way that doesn't steer people. And I say that when you talk about time frames, when you talk about, yes, you do have to put in some effort, you do have to put in a little bit of time, and I think the challenge for people under pressurised work frames is they look at it and think, oh, is it an added extra, or is it pedagogically sound and truly enhancing the learning outcomes for all of our students?
And even if it is pedagogically sound and truly enhancing the learning outcomes, it does come with a significant time commitment. And I think we need to be very mindful of that in trying to bring others along, that you're asking a lot.
I think my colleagues is that people are keen, people are willing, but until you're in a community of practice like this, it's quite hard to grasp that idea of the work that goes in behind it to make it work well. I guess it's part of that knowledge construction thing, and what I'm wanting to do is just to try and start working with the people I work with in these ways, so that which ties into the fact that we were given the iPads to use, just that us using them. That was a big part for me in taking this on board and being able to move forward in an authentic way that's going to enhance the learning of my students.
Yeah, I think one of the keys is taking on board the role of being a broker of the concept, and the way to do that is to use the artifacts that come out of this community, so that, like this webinar, like any research outputs that you develop, examples of assessments, etc., that you can share, so the practical outcomes that you can share with other people are the keys to brokering the ideas.
I think alongside that, though, is the I'm going to call it the angst of change, because we've all gone through an angst about something that has worked or something that hasn't worked, and we've trialled things in bits and been able to come back and say, well, that was definitely a no-go, or whoops, I can see why I really needed to have done that or built that in. We've all had that, and that's part of sharing that wider with our colleagues is really our next step. They need to hear it's not so much the good stuff, it's well, this didn't quite work because, but here was my change practice.
Yeah, that's good. I think that it's important that you don't set yourselves up as being elite experts, but just just like your colleagues. So there isn't that fear factor, that big learning curve that they feel they can't get over. So any other questions from anyone?
No, you're all good. Yeah. Well done, guys. I thought it was awesome.
Thanks, Steve.
Cool. Hey, well, thank you very much. That's been awesome. It's been great to see what you've been up to, and it's fantastic to have this as an archive of that, and we can build on this for our symposium in the middle of the year. So thank you very much, team, and we'll hope to get some of you back, perhaps talking a little bit more about your own individual projects a little bit later as well. So thank you, Adrian, Kelly, and your whole team there. So awesome. So we'll stop the podcast now.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Well done, guys.
We'll catch up next week.
Yeah.